Okay. Good evening and welcome to the regular City Council meeting of Monday, October 8th, 2018. At this time, can we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Durossette.
Here.
Councilmember Lane.
Here.
Vice Mayor Kline.
Here.
Councilmember Ryno.
Here.
And Mayor Vierra.
Here. Next, we will have the invocation by Chris Grigson. Is he here this evening?
I do not see him. Oh, there. No, don't see him.
No. If you'd like, yes, please.
Bow with me. Righteous Heavenly Father, we thank you for everything you do for us and bless us. Please look over this council meeting tonight, look over the first responders that we have working 24 hours a day, and bless the people that run this city. It's through your Jesus we pray. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, this evening we have a presentation of a proclamation for Code Enforcement Officer Appreciation Week. Let me go ahead and read the proclamation declaring the second week in October as Code Enforcement Officer Appreciation Week, whereas the state of California has proclaimed the second week of October as Code Enforcement Officer Week, and whereas code enforcement officers provide for the safety, health, and welfare of the citizens of Ceres through the enforcement of local, state, and federal laws and ordinances dealing with various issues of building, zoning, housing, animal control, environmental, health, and life safety. And whereas code enforcement officers have challenging and demanding roles and often do not receive recognition for their job, they do in improving the quality of life for residents and businesses of local communities. And whereas the role of many code enforcement officers has expanded in recent years, with jurisdictions increasingly relying on the expertise and training of code enforcement officers in their community, and whereas code enforcement officers are dedicated, highly qualified, and highly trained professionals who share the goals of preventing neighborhood deterioration, enhancing communities, ensuring safety, and preserving property values through knowledge, training, and application of housing, zoning, and nuisance laws. And whereas code enforcement officers often have a highly visible role in their communities and regularly interact with the public and a variety of federal, state, county, and local officials in their capacity as code enforcement officers. And whereas the City of Ceres wants to recognize and honor the code enforcement officers that serve our community and acknowledge their role in leading the way to improve quality of life within our city. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Chris Vierra, Mayor of the City of Ceres, do hereby proclaim that the second week of October in 2018 and annually thereafter be known as Code Enforcement Officer Appreciation Week in the City of Ceres, and be it further resolved that the City Council calls upon Ceres residents to join in recognizing and expressing their appreciation for the dedication and service by the individuals who serve as our code enforcement officers. Proclaim this 8th day of October 2018. Is there here anyone? Nope.
Good afternoon or good evening. Thank you once again for the proclamation and the appreciation. I truly appreciate it. I don't receive much positive recognition with some of the public, but I know it can be positive and negative to some of the residents when they receive interaction with myself or Sergeant Coley. But I truly do appreciate it, and I appreciate serving the City of Ceres and the residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I can honestly say we probably appreciate you more than that proclamation acknowledges. So thank you very much for what you do. I know it's not easy because a lot of the time, sometimes people will be upset with you. But thank you. Citizens' communication to the council on matters not included on the agenda. While the city council welcomes and encourages participation in city council meetings, adopted rules allow no more than 5 minutes for expression of non-agenda items. Matters under the jurisdiction of the city council and not on the posted agenda may be addressed by the general public. However, California law prohibits the city council from taking action on any matter which is not on the posted agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the city council. Citizens are entitled to address the city council on any agenda item subject to the 5-minute provision. At this time, is there anyone that would like to address the council on a non-agenda item?
Dave Pratt Series. I'll start out with Series planting the wrong trees in the wrong locations. While I'm out and about, I noticed too many road signs, street signs, and stop signs hidden by the limbs of the trees. And I think it's time that I realize they have a route they do, but when it comes to the signs and stuff, they really need to be trimmed back. Also around Walmart Swamp, the weeds are getting tall again. And all right, I'm back on the shopping carts. At one time, they used to power wash all these shopping carts, and they don't do that anymore. And then one time I pushed the cart from one end to the other. I don't know what was on it, but I washed my hands 2 or 3 times when I got home. And that stuff just goes back in the cycle. So who knows when these carts come back off the streets and stuff know what's been in them and stuff, and people put their kids and their food and stuff in them. I would like to really see these, if anything, they go back to power washing their carts once in a while. And I hope you keep in mind that new constructions, keep in mind the height of fences, because some of the areas they're taking these shopping carts and using them to jump over the fences to take shortcuts. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the council on a non-agenda item? Okay, with that, we will move to appointments to boards and commissions. We have none. Conflict of interest declaration. Is there anyone on the council that would like to declare a conflict of interest on the 6 consent calendar items or 1 new business item? Okay, hearing none, we will move to the consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar are considered routine in nature and will be enacted by a single motion unless otherwise requested by an individual council member or the public for special consideration. Otherwise, recommendation of staff will be accepted and acted upon by roll call vote. At this time, is there anyone on the council that would like any of the consent calendar items pulled for further discussion? Okay, anyone in the audience? Okay, I'll bring it back to the council for discussion or direction.
Move to adopt 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Can we have the roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Durossette.
Yes.
Councilmember Lane.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kline.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryno.
Yes.
And Mayor Vierra.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, we have no unfinished business this evening, no public hearing. We have 1 new business item. I believe this is something we've tackled a few times, but it's a 6-month trial period to allow mobile food vehicles in the city. Mr. Westbrook.
Thank you, Mayor Vierra, council members. I'll keep this brief because, as you just alluded to, you've seen a little bit of this before. We presented some guidelines, draft guidelines, to the Planning Commission at their meeting back in September. We're kind of crafting and modifying some of the guidelines that we had heard from the council. One of the things the Planning Commission did note in the presentation that was made to them was that originally, pursuant to the minutes from the council meeting in the direction, it was a note about the requirement for a conditional use permit. Staff, as we went through and kind of modified the conditions, suggested, at least through the Planning Commission level, that we kind of modify that because it's a 6-month trial with the administrative use permit, which is a mechanism that's already in place, and it's only good for 6 months. The benefit to that is it's about half the cost of a conditional use permit, and is about half the time. An administrative use permit can be processed by staff in 2 to 3 weeks. where a conditional use permit would require a public hearing at the Planning Commission and require anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks to get done. So staff was pushing that. If the council does desire to have the conditional use permit, it's an easy swap. We can do that. It's just that we thought that because of the little bit lower cost and the established time frame through that we would just go with the administrative use permit for the trial period. So some of the changes that we were made at the direction of the council, again, the duration, just 6 months long. The types of permits, temporary use permit, we're suggesting only for up to 5 days within this 6-month window. The administrative permit would be up to 180 days. Permitted locations, commercial and industrial zones, and again, to supplement an existing business. So Blaker Brewing has been an example of somebody who could utilize this. We know that there's been some other interest from some other bars within the community. Actually, at the Planning Commission, the gentleman who owns and operates Runaround Sue's was interested in possibility of getting a food truck at his location. Transferability. With the administrative use permit, specifically Blaker's probably the example here, where they could secure an administrative use permit and then they could just have one food truck come in at a time instead of having every food truck have their own permit. Where a temporary use permit would be a little bit different. If there was an event or something like that, there could be multiple food trucks at one location, but generally something like that's only going to be one day at a time, where the administrative use permit could be day after day after day up to the 180. Aesthetics, one of the things that was important to staff, the commission agreed, and I think the council will too. We don't really want people congregating at the exterior of these things, so we're not allowing them to have tables or chairs or canopies to set that up. You go to the mobile food vehicle, you take it back into the business, or you just take it home. So it's up to you, up to the person. Hours of operations, again, this would be consistent with whatever business they supplement, but in no case would they be open later than midnight and not open before 7 a.m. Restroom facilities, they have to have approval from the business within 200 feet so the employees can get in there and wash their hands, and if any customers need to use the restroom facilities, they have the ability to do so too. Permission obviously requires permission from the property owner. The waste collection, they would be able to use the waste receptacles at the business to dispose of their waste. Licensing, in any case, anything that's issued here, all of those food trucks would have to have Stanislaus County Health Department approval before they could be considered for either the temporary use permit and or the administrative use permit. Business license, because the temporary use permit is temporary in nature, we weren't suggesting that each of those events have to have a business license for each of those mobile food vehicles. However, if somebody was going to be permitted through the AUP process, then they would need to have a business license with the City of Ceres. And then the last thing that we wanted to make sure we got is staff hasn't come up with yet if it'll be a sticker or magnet, but something that's easily identifiable that can be placed on the vehicle that shows that it's permitted to operate within the City of Ceres. So those were the big things. The only thing that staff is suggesting, because it's not in the guidelines, because we haven't approved this, we haven't really had any interest yet. We know that that'll come once the council gives a blessing on the guidelines. We just kind of wanted to not start the 6-month trial period until we actually issue the first permit. Assuming that somebody comes in this week, they may have a permit by the beginning of November or thereabouts, then starting the 180-day trial. Then, if the council wants to start the 180 days tonight, we can certainly do that too. And with that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions?
I have a couple. You said that the TUP won't require a business license for food trucks, but do we require them now for a TUP?
No.
Okay. And you want a sample of proposed signage. Are we going to state specifically that they can't have A-frames, or are we going to rely on them looking at our sign ordinance?
Yeah, the signage, the intent is just the vehicle is the signage, that they wouldn't have any other flags or pennants or A-frames.
And I have one more question. You say that trash receptacles, they can use an existing business, but shouldn't we have a garbage can next to the mobile vendor?
Yeah, I think that it suggests that they have to have their own garbage can, but at the end of the day, they would have to take that trash to wherever on site. See if I can find that specifically. But yes, we want them to have their own trash can to serve the food truck. Yeah, it's under number 23.
No. That wouldn't be it. I think they should have a trash can next to the mobile. Is that what 23 says? I thought that was the 23 would be if they were going to go dump at the business.
We can simply just add a sentence there that suggests they have to have their own trash can.
But
That's
yet-
the intent, that we wanted them to have their own trash can next to their food truck.
Right.
But we also wanted them to have the ability to dump it on site at the end of the day.
Right, and
So
that's
we-
what I'd like to see, is that they have to have their own as well as dump it at the established business.
Okay, that's an easy fix. We'll just add that
Okay.
language.
All right, thank you.
Vice Mayor Kline?
You know, when we look at this thing, you've got an AUP and a TUP, and we talked about Blaker Brewing or Runaround Sue's or River Oaks Golf Course being able to apply for them to have multiple, rotate out vendors and things like that. But because it's an industrial zone, what if UPS or Granger or somebody wanted to do the same kind of thing? Would they be allowed to apply for an AUP or TUP?
No, they would not.
And why would that be?
So the administrative use permit is specifically for establishments to supplement their business. UPS doesn't sell food or do anything like that, nor does Granger. So I think the circumstance that's already covered in existing zoning code is the kind of the food truck that comes for a 5 to 10 minute period of time. Somebody comes out, purchases something, and the truck moves on. That's already permitted. But this would not apply to any industrial business that it supplements a business. So UPS and Granger don't serve anything.
So over there, I'm gonna say over there, I believe it's off Rockefeller. They have that liquor store and things like that that does sell food and things like that in there. Would they be allowed to have a food truck vendor come in and park in their parking lot?
No,
And why would that be?
because this is going to be to supplement an existing business, like a restaurant or a bar facility that doesn't serve food, something like that. That's the intent. It's not intended to just be in any industrial location
Okay.
throughout the city. It's going to be pretty narrow in its scope. There's probably a half a dozen businesses that I would assume citywide that could fit the bill.
And that was based on council direction, the conversation that you had about the limitations and the concerns about its proliferation, and from going from where we are today to, in essence, no to everything, very carefully crafted to basically just crack the door very, very slightly, limited 6 months, see how it works. If we're happy with the implementation, there's always, again, this is a trial, so we can see how it works for 6 months. If we get a lot of input and direction of potential changes, then this is an open trial. But we've, based on that last direction, we wanted to narrow it as far as possible to make sure we give it a chance for success. And then we can always, it's a lot easier to open the door more than it is to shut the door.
Okay, well, with that being said, then, if we went on a 6-month trial basis and we started in November, then realistically, we're looking at March or April when the 6 months would be over, okay? And yet, places like River Oaks, it sort of slows down during the holiday because of the weather. You've got, Blaker Brewing is a completely different type of thing. But, with the holidays and stuff coming in, wouldn't we really limit ourselves as far as realizing what the scope of impact would be, doing it that way? Or would it be, let's say Blaker Brewing applies for one, they get theirs for November. They would 6-month trial would go from there when they get it. but let's say River Oaks waits till January, would their 6 months start in January?
No, it's just a 6-month trial. So the only reason I mentioned that is instead of utilizing some of the 180-day trial period, let's wait until we issue the first permit. So the second and the third people won't get the full 180 days. They'll get less than that.
But once it's, let's say it's first issued in January 1st, the 6 months starts from there?
Correct.
Is that what you're
That's
recommending?
what I'm suggesting.
Okay.
So if nobody gets one
Oh, yeah.
until January
that's what-
1st, then that's when it would start.
Okay.
And we can always extend it.
Yeah.
After that first 6 months, if we don't have enough data, we can extend it for 3 months or 6 months or whatever. So, Councilmember Durossette?
Yeah, Tom, industrial, not commercial.
No, commercial and industrial.
Commercial and industrial. So I guess one of my questions, similar to what Mike would say, for example, if, Supermoms, not a bad example, but Supermoms in the Richland Shopping Center, and they wanted to have some sort of a food vendor there, yea or nay? I'm just kind of confused.
Yeah, I think they sell food.
They sell food.
So why would they want a food vendor?
Well, because they only can sell certain foods inside that facility.
I
I'm
would
not
say,
I'm not saying
I would
that
say
place.
Supermoms would be consistent with their existing operation, that would be a supplement to their
Like that'd
business.
be a supplement.
I mean, most people are going to think it's direct competition to
Right.
what they sell, but I think you could make the argument that supplements.
And then
I
the other
know-
thing that we included, which was a concern before, is still a 1,000-foot distance requirement. So if, for example, Supermont got something in that shopping center, then nobody else would get one in that shopping center.
Right,
Because
because it's that
it's,
1,000 foot.
yeah.
Right.
Marinos on Mitchell Avenue, right? They sell food. They close at 7. Could they have a taco truck out or a food truck out there from 7 to 12?
Conceivably, yes.
Conceivably. All right. And we picked not to have any chairs or tables.
I think that from an aesthetic standpoint, it's just that allowing tables and chairs blossom into canopies and just they proliferate. So in my travels around the valley, generally seeing those seating conditions and canopies, generally they're in an unkept position. And so we didn't want to have that type of look. At least we didn't want to suggest having that.
Right. And I'm not even saying a canopy. I don't know if we're doing them a disservice by not allowing them. I mean, they're coming, they're trying to support whatever that aspect of it is. From an industrial commercial, and I'm not saying, I see you're shaking your head. I'm not saying that we allow them to have it look like Crow's Landing. But, I mean, if we want this to try to be somewhat successful, I think we need to give them a little bit of some tools.
Well,
And that's besides the point.
I think we can start with baby steps too, because I don't think, using Marinos as an example, do you want to see a picnic table out there, a couple picnic tables, a canopy on Mitchell Road?
No, I mean, I get what you're saying, but I'm saying that, and again, I understand the baby steps, so I'll drop that one. How many are we going to allow? I mean, and again, I think that was a fear that I had in the past in regards to, I mean, there could be 30 of them. And then we just, I think, did a disservice to our city in regards
But
to.
if I may make a comment, because this is the thing we're gonna run into, and I think when you say that, let's say River Oaks has one for Friday and Saturday, Blaker Brewing does the same thing, and then, I'm trying to think right off the top of my head, Run Around Sue's decides to have one. So now you've got 3 of them all at the same time, at the same weekend. So we need to think about the establishments that is complementing and helping before we really limit, what direction. Because if we say it limits 2, then all of a sudden somebody's got to refocus their energy on something that it could complement, and that was the intent of it.
Well, I think Blaker Brewery, though, is going to have one specific food vendor there, and maybe not necessarily, not to speak for them, but it's going to be, my son goes to the food trucks in Keys, and that's the same one that's there all the time. Kids from Ceres, they drive over there, and they know where it's at. They know it's going to be there. It's not going to change from, calamari one day to maybe lobster the other, or tacos the next day, So I think that stuff's fine. I did have one more question, just so I don't forget. On the TUP, the 5 days, I spoke with one of the owners of River Oaks today. They fall under that category, I thought, in regards to term mobile vehicles
They could actually do both.
They could have
They could actually have a TUP or an AUP,
Okay,
depending
because
on what
they
their
didn't
event
think
was.
they could from what they had read
No.
online, and I was trying to explain it to them.
They would have the ability to do both.
Yeah, I think that the only reason we limited the temporary use permit is generally good for 15 days per calendar year. Because this was a 6-month trial, staff just reviewed that a little bit. I think Toby is correct. Under an AUP circumstance, River Oaks could have something every day if they wanted to. I know that they've had events in the past where they had Relax on the Range, where they had a music festival. Maybe that's a circumstance where they apply for a temporary use permit, and maybe they have 5 or 6 food trucks during that event on that one day.
Which that would be for the TUP.
Correct.
I guess what my thing is, we're taking really small baby steps. I'd like to see a cap for the first 6 months. Maybe it's 10 that we would allow to, be in specific pockets within the area. Because if you look at Turlock and you look at Modesto, they have certain areas where they have their, food vendors. But at the same time, I just see, and there's been a lot of people asking about this. So, obviously that would be a good thing for the city, but at the same time too, I just see that we don't have a cap on it. I just see that there's a lot of people might be coming.
I think the limitations are such, though, it is so limited. I would be shocked if there's an overwhelming response. There's just, again, the way we've crafted this on purpose, it is a very, very narrow and limited number of things. And obviously, if we open this thing up and we get 30 applications, we're coming back.
Okay.
Right? I mean, we're coming back down as council for direction. This is a trial. If we get a far bigger response than we're expecting, then we're going to come back and say, are you comfortable with, here's what we've got locations-wise. And obviously, we're going to be giving council updates on how this process goes, so you're well involved at every step of the process.
Okay, Councilmember Ryno?
Mr. Westbrook, didn't you say that you really didn't think that we had, based on the locations we were going to permit, that we shouldn't have an oversaturation? Didn't you, that's your feeling, correct?
That's my feeling. I just don't think that, like the city manager just mentioned, I think that it's a pretty narrow scope. I don't think we're going to get overrun with a lot of applications. It may be a half a dozen to 10. I'm thinking, if I had to guess, probably not more than 5 or 6.
But I think maybe to make Councilmember Durossette more comfortable, maybe we should put a cap on it, instead of, if you do get a bunch of applications, then bringing it back to us. How can you do that if you've already set up what your parameters are?
And
you
I think
need
from
to in the beginning, I think.
From a staff perspective, the temporary use permits were not really so sensitive. I think those are really a one-day event. I think you're probably worried more about some being there consistently day after day after day under the 180-day scenario.
Yes.
Okay.
If you look at how many establishments, we'll say bars that we have here, because they could all have one, correct? Could Save Mart have one? They sell food. It would be, a nice gourmet food truck. I'm just saying, so there could be one there in Save Mart. I think I'd be right. Rancho, San Miguel, La Mornita. And I'm just throwing out, and so when I see, and I've talked to these people, people are excited, and so it's a good thing, but I also like your idea, so I might feel a little bit better.
Staff's not opposed to putting a cap. That's absolutely fine with us.
We would just ask you clarify, TUP cap or AUP cap, just so we know. And when you say AUP, that's not the number, like that would be by location, because like an AUP for Blaker could have 6 different food trucks or 10 or whatever, but just making sure you clarify what limitations you're talking about.
Okay, unless there are any other questions, I'm going to open to the public, see if anyone who wants to comment on this.
Dave Press series. Why not industrial? Say you got a warehouse that's got a lot of employees and they're limited on time, and maybe they'd like to have one of these trucks shows up, they go get their food and the truck takes off. We finally did that where I worked at, that showed.
We already allow that, Dave.
What's that?
We already allow that.
Oh, so the warehouse, the industrial.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
No problem. Anyone else? We allow it, and not many people take part in it, so.
Gene Akeley series. with the catering trucks in mind and everything, and kind of a new thing, when these people violate stuff, they're probably going to do it after hours when there's not enough people to enforce it from the city. That's the norm around Ceres. People do things after everybody closes up shop for the city. Who's going to enforce that? We don't have code enforcement at night.
When they go to renew, they won't be allowed to.
But how are we going to pinpoint those people if nobody goes out and cites them?
Well, we have to have somebody call in. I mean, obviously.
Well, that's just hearsay at that point, right? If
Well,
I
we
call
can-
in and say, hey, that truck had a canopy up
the
there.
trial period. You can't have it perfect until we see what's going to happen.
No, I'm saying while they're already out there, not before.
I understand, but how can we predict what we don't know is going to happen?
Well-
Let's wait and see what happens, then we can deal with it and address it.
Well, wouldn't you have to have somebody out there to, like law enforcement?
Not necessarily.
No?
Nope.
Just a complaint.
Well, if there's a complaint, we'll go out and check it, and if it's true, then they won't be allowed to come back.
And the other issue too is that,
I mean, let me ask you, how else would you suggest that we deal with it?
well, if somebody called in and say right now,
These work really well, Gene. Anyone can take a picture.
Well,
and send us a
it's
picture.
obvious. I've
It happens
done
a
that.
lot, right?
Done
I mean,
that.
you've done it. Anybody in this room has done it.
Yeah.
We get complaints pretty regularly with somebody using their phone.
all right, I could do that too, but I mean, some people probably won't think of that right away, and they might be driving by or something, seeing something going on, and go, wait a minute, that's not really correct, and they call in and say, could you send somebody out there, you know? And that's probably what you're saying is not going to happen until.
Well, it may, but we may have one person that doesn't like it, and we may have 50 people that do,
Yeah,
and
I
then we come
understand.
back here and say, well, maybe we should allow that because 50 people like it and one person doesn't. So we don't know how it's going to look. That's why it's called the trial period.
Right, I
And
understand
so, it's the best that we can, and we're trying to put some parameters on it, but we don't know exactly how it's going to end up until we get into 6 months.
And the other issue is the equipment. There's food inspection by the county, more or less, I guess. Isn't that correct, Tom?
Correct. They're issued a permit from the health department.
There should be something else that's brought up too, is the equipment, as far as the running part of the vehicles, not the food preparation stuff, but the vehicle itself. I believe, like they do in semis on the highways, that in order to protect the people in Ceres, there should be an annual inspection, a vehicle inspection that they have to pay for, and they have to show you certification of that it's up to par, it's safe for them to drive on our streets. And along with the other issues of the trial period and everything, I think they should have their vehicles inspected. I mean, look at the ice cream trucks that drive around in your neighborhoods. They're just thrown together. I'm surprised they haven't killed somebody yet. I mean, they're in really bad shape if you've seen them. So to have some nice, up-to-standard vehicles in our community that are kind of nice to look at instead of something that looks like an old beat-up Winnebago, I think we need to go to some inspection, yearly inspection on their vehicles to allow them, as part of getting a permit to sell food, that it'd be a lot safer for the people in Ceres on both sides. The food inspection from the county and an inspection from a legal inspection station on their equipment.
Yeah, when they come in, we'll be looking at what it looks like. These will be higher-end food trucks.
But there is, an annual inspection would be the most important thing to have. That way, if something goes wrong, it makes it look like they didn't neglect it for a long period of time. It's something to consider. You got heavy equipment on the highway. They can't be on the highway unless they have a yearly inspection. So why can't we raise the standard compared to some of the other cities around here and say, hey, look, we got good equipment coming here for food vendors, and we got safe vehicles on our streets for our pedestrians and the people driving on the streets. All right, thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll bring it back to the council for more discussion and direction. Tom?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention something to Mr. Yakeley's point. So as a 6-month trial, 180-day trial, staff has to observe. And so he's correct, we can observe during working hours. but we probably get the best intel when we're observing non-working hours. So that'll be me, because obviously at the end of it, I need to make a recommendation to you that everybody's following the rules, doing what they're saying they're doing, and following within the guidelines. So I'll get to do those inspections after hours.
So if we see a guy with dark glasses and a baseball cap on,
It
that's
may be
probably
me.
you?
So,
Okay.
but no, the staff does intend to monitor this, just like we would anything. It's no different than when there's a conditional use permit or some other things that are issued. For example, last weekend, St. Jude's had their Harvest Festival. Staff monitored noise levels. That was after hours. So,
Okay. All right, any more discussion on this item? Okay, so do you have the direction you need? Well, I mean, we don't need to take a motion on this, do we?
We
Or-
would like you to
You want us to add
direct
some
us to
things?
proceed, yes.
yeah, I think that Councilman Ryno's note about the trash cans being specific at the location, I think that's easy. The discussion is whether we want to cap the number for an administrative use permit or a temporary use permit.
So what do you want to cap it at?
10?
10? You okay with
That's
that?
just for the AUP, because again, the TUP could be a,
Yeah.
20 come down here.
To one.
Now, when you're saying 10, you're saying 10 locations, because if Blaker puts 2 out there, that's only 1 location, we still have 9 locations available.
10 locations.
10, so you're going 10 locations. Okay.
And maybe we don't get there, you know?
No, but I wanted to make sure it was locations and not 10 food vendors, where if you put 2 there and 2 at River Oaks and 2 at, Run Around Sue's or somewhere, then all of a sudden you've got 6 food vendors and you're limited yourself.
Blaker could have 3 different people coming. Friday, they could have
Under one
night,
permit, yes. So they
Thursday-
could have one permit and
Right.
have,
Right. One night
Thursday
this,
through
next
Sunday.
night this.
Correct.
Right.
They could have different people come
Why don't
in.
we do this? Why don't we start with 10? If Mr. Westbrook has 50, bring back the other 40 to us, and then we can decide if we want to go beyond 10.
Because this is obviously going to be laws of diminishing returns. The farther we get away from the issuance of that first one, the shorter the time frame.
Correct.
Yeah.
So why are we looking at just AUPs and not TUPs as far as capping them?
They only get to do it 5 times in the 180-day period, correct?
Correct.
And that's only, I mean, a TUP is for a temporary use. You're talking about events,
Okay.
right? The difference between those two is event versus a daily activity.
So if I understand that right, let's just say because it's available, River Oaks does a TUP, they're allowed a truck there 5 days, and after that, they're done.
Generally, under that scenario, what we would envision is if they wanted a truck there permanently, they would get the administrative use permit. If they were going to replicate their Relax on the Range, what they had a couple of years ago with some bands and so forth, that's an event where they could have more than one truck, but they wouldn't do that every weekend. That's a pretty big undertaking. So,
But if,
So they could do both.
yeah, but, yeah, so, I'm fine with 10 locations.
Okay?
You guys want to go 12? I mean, I'm
No,
just,
10
No,
is
I'm
good.
fine
you
with
guys are
10.
good with 10.
Yeah,
I'm good
10's
with
fine.
10.
Perfect.
Yep. Okay, so you have the direction you need?
yes.
Okay, everybody good?
Yes.
Wants a motion.
You want a motion on that?
Well, we don't have, it's not listed as a,
It's just minute action, though. It would be preferred, because it is approving a program, so.
I'll make a motion for the 6-month trial period to allow mobile food vehicles in the city with up to and not to exceed 10 locations, and amend the staff report to include trash receptacles at the mobile food vendors' vehicles.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have the roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Durossette?
Yes.
Councilmember Lane?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kline?
Yes.
Councilmember Ryno?
Yes.
And Mayor Vierra.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember referrals, is there anyone that would like to have an item placed on a future agenda?
I got a question. This is bugging me. I drive down Moffett Road every day, and every day the apartments or the condos by May Hensley have stuff out every day. Do they know who's throwing that stuff out? I don't think so. And I guess the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I think, and I mean, you've driven down there, right? I mean, even right now, there's all kinds of stuff out there. You know,
But couldn't it be each unit is having a scheduled pickup date different than another one?
absolutely.
A multifamily generally does not have access to the bulky item pickup, so that is one of the challenges. We'll look into it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Reports. I have nothing to report. Councilmember Ryno?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Vice Mayor Kline?
Well, I just make a comment that, you know, we have a regular here that usually shows up by Leonard Shepard. He went in and had a knee replacement, and I visited him about 10 days ago. He had the total knee replacement, well, it got infected. Well, they tried to clear the infection up, but the titanium that they put in there was also infected, so they had to take it out and redo it again. So he's going to be laid up for about 16 weeks, and he's in rehab in Modesto. So, you know, he's been a regular here since I've been on the council. So I just would like everybody just to, you know, sort of think about him.
Okay. Councilmember Lane?
Nothing, Mayor.
Councilmember Durossette?
Nothing.
Hey, Ms. Dean? Tom? Mr. Wells?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple items to highlight. We've got a couple ribbon cuttings coming up. Tomorrow at noon is the Golden Bear Physical Therapy, 2908 Whitmore. Ribbon cutting with the Chamber of Commerce. Also on Friday, most people in this room have probably already visited this restaurant, but Pastas Pronto will be having ribbon cutting Friday at noon this week. Reminder for council members Durossette and Lane, the 2+2+2 meeting is next Tuesday morning. Reminder. I will shoot you an email as well. And then lastly, Artist Spotlight coming up next week on 10/18. So that's all I had this evening.
Tom?
Nothing.
Mr. Perry? Nothing?
Is it?
I got it.
Jeremy?
Oh, yeah.
Supervisor DeMartini? Nothing. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything from the fire guys? Nothing? Okay. Okay, with that, we will move to closed session where we have conference with labor negotiator followed by public employee performance evaluation. From that, we will adjourn to our next regularly scheduled meeting, which will be
Take this
Monday,
with you.
October 22nd at 6 p.m. So thank you.
Right there.